Just a heads up before we get into this, we're going to be talking about some mental health issues in this video today. I am not a mental health professional. I want to be really clear about that up front. What I'm sharing with you here is based on my own experience and my own ideas based on the things that I have read. All my sources are in the description. That said, let's get on with the video. To expect life to meet your standards of certainty and to try to force it to by looking for meaning in anything, it's gonna drive you around the bend.
Everything. 23.
It's on 23.
32.
23. It's on 23.
When you leave a cult, you don't have the certainty that it provided you with anymore. When someone's given you all the answers, you don't really have to worry too much about thinking for yourself to discover those answers. And you don't have to worry too much about living with the uncertainty of an ambiguous world. When I didn't have that anymore, it was like I became anxious in a whole new way. In a way, I was joining the rest of the world in its sort of collective anxiety, which I was spared before. Maybe not in the best way, I'm definitely not in the best way, but because I had this very concrete sort of understanding and explanation for everything, map of reality, I didn't have to deal with the ambiguities of life quite as much because I could explain everything, But without that, welcome to the real world, Without that, I ended up having a white-knuckled grip on everything. For quite a while, I was very rigid and intense with my expectations of what reality would be, my expectations of what my life would be, and the voice in my head, that voice that we've all kind of got that's like doing like constant narration on every single thing that happens, started to take on that sort of arrogant, totalistic tone of a dictator, of a cult leader. And in Stephen Haig's words, it basically became the dictator within. And to be honest, I think that's the perfect term for it, because in a lot of ways, anxiety is about control. It's an awkward sort of hubristic control, but I think it is about control. And stick with me here, because I realize that could sound a little bit insensitive or perhaps off the mark. So stick with me, because I am speaking from my own experience here. I think the thing about anxiety is that it kind of builds up a callus around something that you're scared of, something that you don't want to face or feel like you can't face. And I think that's fair, because life's scary sometimes, shit is terrifying sometimes. And so there's going to be points where you don't want to deal with it, or you feel you can't, or you're just so scared that it doesn't feel like an option. But the thing with anxiety is that it presents in all these bigger and scarier ways. So you end up feeling like you've got this sort of dark cloud over your head at all times. This sort of big and scary sort of ominous feeling drains the color and the joy out of everything, But for me, the heart of all of that, it always comes down to a point of personal power. It comes down to my own agency and my own capacity to respond to the things that I'm faced with in my life. But it's not as simple as just facing things, is it? It's not as simple as just going, this thing that I'm scared of, that I've been avoiding, that I've built this callus up around, is something that I can just face now and then everything will be okay. Because anxiety is one of those things where over time your brain gets used to dealing with things in a certain way. It gets used to thinking about things in a certain way. So just facing that fear once and for all is a meaningful thing, but I don't think that's the whole thing. It would almost be a little too easy. It's almost a little too hero's journey for reality, And that, I think, is because anxiety isn't just that feeling you get when you're faced with this thing that you're afraid of. It's a series, it's a habit, it's a continuous habit of interpretations of thoughts and avoidant behaviors. I think we equate anxiety to nervousness and fear because that's what it feels like a lot of times. But I think it's really a series of pattern of behaviors, which are avoidant behaviors and interpretations of thoughts. So it makes sense then to me that overcoming it is not as simple as thinking different and sort of fixing your thoughts. It's actually about habits and skills. So after I left this whole worldview behind, my habits and skills were dysfunctional. To be kind, they were dysfunctional. They were really muddled up. There were maybe some useful things in there, but they were all mixed up with some really unuseful things and some really quite destructive things, and it just wasn't working. It wasn't going well. And the more the world that I'd now joined, having left this entire worldview behind, you know, coming to reality with the rest of the world, the more that world just changed into the Trump era and now post-Trump era, the more I started using social media and sort of picking up other ways of seeing things, which only added to that, you know, only added to this growing sense of ambiguity, or uncertainty with ambiguity and fear and nervousness, to where these sort of white-knuckled maladaptive coping mechanisms became entrenched. I think anxiety begins somewhere quite personal and unique to all of us, but it ends up becoming this quite predictable pattern of thoughts and beliefs and behaviors and stuff, right? But I do think rooting around in the past is only part of like teasing out a solution to the whole thing. As Jung said, you know, that the solution is always in the here and now. And to be fair, when it comes to like anxiety being so widespread, our society and social media don't help this. You know, I'm always like astonished when I hear people say like, yeah, I have anxiety, and then they talk about how they're on social media all the time and they're like guzzling coffee all the time and popping pills for it. It's like, mate, maybe turn off social media and stop guzzling the caffeine, you know, reduce the caffeine intake a little bit, and maybe things might improve a little bit. Like, give your adrenals a rest, boy. You will thank yourself later. But that's the kind of shit we do when we're avoiding shit, right? We end up distracting ourselves from distraction with distraction. We end up establishing and reinforcing this norm of like a flurry of tiptoeing around discomfort. But discomfort always catches up with us in the end, and we just end up more and more scared. People always say like anxiety never goes away, you just have to learn to live with it. And that kind of has always felt like disempowering and disheartening to me. But despite it being true, and I do think it's true, lately I've started to feel less disheartened and disempowered by it, because I've sort of realized that while it is true, the thing you're dealing with, anxiety, and the person you are when you're learning to deal with it, both begin to change. So you're not actually dealing with the same thing you were dealing with before, and also you're not the same person dealing with it. You stop being the person who's willing to like shrink back from a trigger and avoid things, and you start being the kind of person who wants to, you know, take a deep breath and, you know, bite the bullet, take one for the team and face shit. That doesn't mean you're not going to get scared of shit. I mean, of course you're going to get scared of shit, but as a wise commenter of mine recently pointed out, courage cannot exist without fear. The thing is, life is ambiguous, and, you know, you can be sure of a fair few things in life, but you can rarely be certain of anything. And to expect life to meet your standards of certainty and to try to force it to by looking for meaning in anything, it's going to drive you around the bend. Like, for me, believing in the law of attraction was a convenient way to like convince myself that I had more control over anything than I actually do, and it was a convenient way to like stop that dread of uncertainty setting in. But as I wrote for my Instagram recently, reality will never be more flexible, but you can be. The rage-fueled frenzy of trying to make reality develop the flexibility of a circus contortionist is so deeply avoidant of the inevitable, unavoidable pain of human life. It's no wonder it's mostly anxious people doing it. Avoidance is what anxiety is about, after all. For me, the game changer has been this: resilience is the goal, courage is the way there. Like, when you turn west and walk, you never arrive at west. You'll never become like a pure embodiment of courage. There's going to be times when you shrink back in fear, you cower in the face of uncertainty, but there's always going to be an opportunity to find courage. And in each time you do that, every single time you do that, you build resilience. For me, it's about learning to face the fear. It's about learning to live with uncertainty, right? Because you've got to find the courage to do that, because it's never going to stop, right? And, you know, I think a big part of that is like teaching yourself not to expect unreasonable things from life. Freedom from any dictator, whether they're in your head or up on a stage in front of you, is not about trying to control reality so that it fits into your rigid idea of what it should be. That kind of just defeats the object. Freedom isn't about having things the way you want them. It's not about keeping your options open forever. It's about looking at the options that life has given you and gracefully, flexibly making the most of them. It's about learning to accept the unavoidable discomfort of life's ambiguity and carrying on anyway, confident in the robustness of your character and the quality of your deeply held values, and daring to see if you can manage to stay in one piece throughout life's inevitable trials. Usually when I upload a video like this, there's stuff I can't say in the video, be it due to time constraints or because YouTube just doesn't like you talking about certain things on the platform. So most weeks I upload some audio content to my Patreon. There's over like 30 audio companions on Patreon right now, including stuff on like some of the cultural causes for some of the things that we've talked about in this video, and some stuff that you just won't hear me talking about on the channel. It's like £2 a month will get you access. There's a cat hair in the way. £2 a month will get you access to that, but you can always contribute more if my work is worth more to you. Remember, if you don't think for yourself, someone else will gladly do it for you. I'm Andy Fellows. Please be kind and ask good questions, and I'll see you in the next one.